Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, March 5th, and we are delighted to welcome our very special guest, Mayor Cathy Murillo. Mayor, thanks so much for taking the time out. I know you have a hugely busy schedule. It's much appreciated. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, you know, 4 years ago, in August of 2017, you were the very first guest that we had on Newsmakers when you were running for your current term. And now, as you're seeking reelection, I mean, you have to say it's been an extraordinary 4 years. I mean, your term has been bookended by the Thomas Fire and the debris flow, literally the day you were inaugurated. And now we have pandemic and the economic shutdown and the controversy over racism. Why do you, what do you tell voters? Why do you deserve to be reelected? What are the some specific accomplishments that you've had during this 4 years?
Jerry, well, thanks. You know, first of all, I'm remembering that interview over at TVSB studios, and I'm hoping eventually, you know, you'll get back there, unless you're liking this format. You know, it's awfully convenient, right, to sit at home with your dog nearby and a cup of tea. And
yeah, it's not the same without JP and, you know, all the people over there, Eric and Heba, and you know all the folks over there.
I do, and I was a producer of public access TV for a long time, and so I really feel for the changes going on over there and the funding that got cut, and proud to say that the city of Santa Barbara is still, you know, providing funding. So I guess that's the first thing I would say why people should vote for me, is I'm a real supporter of public access TV, when it would be really easy for a government entity to keep that money or to redirect it some way because of the federal laws that allow that kind of change. So Oscar Gutierrez on the city council, big on free speech. And so that really means a lot to me too. So you know, basically I'm running to continue my service to the city and to look out for the well-being of the residents, to protect the natural environment, to protect the health of the economy. I've been on the council for 10 years. I started in 2012. And so I want to build on the work that I did for those 10 years and build on the relationships that I have with city residents, city staff. I have great relationships with city staff. The work that I do regionally with regional leaders. I serve on regional boards. I'm the chair of a couple of them, really proud of that. So my focus will be on fiscal health of the city. We're been hit hard from pandemic and our revenue sources. I want to provide strong services for our families and make policy decisions that create housing opportunities that would solve a lot of our issues. Is more housing. So climate resilience is also high on my list of priorities, as is criminal justice reform. So I know I've seen a couple of your shows where you've talked to other council members about that civilian review oversight, you know, process that we're, you know, in the middle of, but that's only one piece. That's just our police department. There's a bigger picture of, you know, how the district attorney brings charges, how judges decide bail and sentencing. And one of the relationships I have is with, I have some friends in the public defender's office. And so this wonderful and passionate and painful experience that we went through this summer, you know, the racial reckoning, you know, how do police departments treat Black and brown people? The conversation that's come out of that is that we need to do more for criminal justice reform. So that is also on my list of things to do, you know, as I go
into the things that
go
you
into the second term.
Things that you have done, specific accomplishments in the first term. What would you point to, 2 or 3 things?
Sure. Well, you know, community-wise, I was really proud to organize a women's summit after Brett Kavanaugh was appointed to the bench. and brought together a lot of women leaders and teenage girls, and we ended it up with a self-defense training. So it was a real women's empowerment event. I am proud of what we did, responding to the Healing Justice Black Lives Matter demands that came out of last summer. We accomplished quite a bit, not just the civilian review process, but creating a fund for their Juneteenth. So there was like a positive cultural uplift for the Black community. I am proud of the project labor agreement policy that we have at the city, and it's a way for public tax dollars to fund public works projects, and a way to use unionized workers. And part two of the policy is to create this apprenticeship recruitment program. And so I really emphasize that, Jerry. I know you have some criticisms maybe of the program, but when you look at the ability for young people who were born and raised in the city of Santa Barbara to become apprentices, to be plumbers or electricians or painters, and get jobs that the city creates, I'm glad for that. But I guess I have to say about the pandemic too.
Yeah.
Being the mayor during the pandemic, we transitioned to these virtual meetings. They're long, they're kind of torturous, and but we get city business done. The city's well run. The airport, took some hits, but it gets some FCC grants. And so we're coming out of this. It hasn't been easy, but I've been there for my residents and for my businesses, and we've been supportive of everybody who lives and works in the city of Santa Barbara.
All right. Now, last year you decided to jump into the race for the assembly for this open seat. What do you say to voters who look at that and say, oh, gee, she really wasn't committed to being the mayor. She was more interested in political advancement?
I was trying to remember the last time I saw you in person, and I think it was at the forum that they had at Carpinteria City Hall, right? I think that was the last time that I saw you. So, I've been making a lot of phone calls the end of 2020 when I started calling people and saying, hey, I'm up for reelection in 2021. Can I still count on your support? And then, as you know, I raised quite a bit of money before the end of the year because I wanted to start 2021 strong. And nobody has asked me that, Jerry. No, nobody has said, hey, you ran for assembly and you didn't make it. Maybe you didn't really care about the city. But I'll answer your question. Just let me have a sip.
Sure.
It's pure vodka. I'm kidding.
I thought it was gin.
Oh, geez. I don't drink, just in case you don't know. So let's see. So what I would say, if people think that I didn't really care about the city, they can think that if they want. It's not true. I would have still represented my city residents and more people. And it was a great experience, actually. It broadened my knowledge of how the city interacts with the state. I got to meet a bunch of interesting people. I did find Sacramento full of a lot of big egos, and it's a high stakes thing, and a lot of high stakes issues. And I could have done the job, and but I have to say that I really respect Steve Bennett. Yeah. And I honor his victory, and so far he's doing a good job. We had a meeting maybe just last week, and we were he was asking how he could help us, and one of the things I told him was that the alcohol beverage control right now is allowing downtown restaurants to, drink, speaking of drink, on the street, and then also to do takeout, margaritas to go. I'm laughing at it because it's just so alcoholic, but so I told him, I said, well, if you have any influence with the ABC, we could sure use some help. The restaurants have been hard hit. So no, I'm okay with losing. I mean, you don't run for stuff if you don't expect to, yeah, there's always a possibility you might not win, and you have to be, big about it. And I certainly don't have any resentments of,
No.
going forward. You gotta let all that go. I have a motto in politics, is to have a short memory. And I think I got that from, because I'm a big baseball fan. And so that's one of the things that the announcers talk about. You got to have a short memory.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
especially
yeah.
if you're, Kelly Jansen, your closer on the Dodgers. I know he's got a short memory because he coughs it up a lot. No, I don't want to bring
I
that.
but I thought he was doing okay in spring training.
Yeah.
That's what I
Two
saw.
games in, and plus he pitched against the Giants, so who wouldn't be doing well in spring training? Let me ask you this, and take yourself out of this equation. But as you know, under our district election system, the mayor is the only person who runs citywide. And you finished first in a field of 5 last time, 28%, I think. Don't you think it would be better to have a runoff for mayor, to have the top 2 finishers in a primary run against each other, so there is at least one elected official at City Hall who has won a majority of the city vote?
Well, I think you need to adjust up to 29. Somebody told me that I ended up with 29%. I mean, just to be accurate. That's an idea. I was happy with the results. The five of us were all qualified, and we all brought something. And so I was kind of looking at it like, so there's 5 of us, so each of us had 20%. And then, the person who came in 5th was sort of, under 20, and I got a little bit more. And I'm okay with that. I guess someone could start a conversation about, are you talking about ranked choice voting?
Well, that would be another possibility. I'm just talking about, for example, last time you and Hal then would have run off, Hal Conklin would have run off one-on-one. And a lot of cities do that. And, my background is in San Francisco where it happens. But again, the idea is, instead of going into office with, 7 out of 10 people having voted for someone else, you would have gone in with a majority, and really had that mandate, I think, to get stuff done and been in a stronger position.
Well, Jerry, it would have been me and Frank Hotchkiss.
Oh, that's
Frank
right.
Hotchkiss came in second.
So that would have been like 85-15 or something. That's right. I forgot. Frank did come in second.
So I guess what I would say too is that of all the 6 districts, I came in first in all of them except for 2. So I came in second in the San Roque and the so it would be district 4, so the Riviera, and district 5, which has San Roque. So I guess the more conservative, the more where more Republicans are, I came in second. So if that helps people, I really did come in first in 4 of the 6 districts, and nobody brings that up to me, Jerry, that I didn't win with like a supermajority.
Well, all right. Let's. When you guys had this debate on the council about the business improvement district for Coast Village Road recently, and the organizer that came and said he had 30% of the merchants on board, and you said 30% is way too low. That means a small amount of people can make it happen. So if it's too low for a business improvement district, why isn't it too low for being the mayor?
Well, I think we had some clarity on that since then, that it was 30% for the petitions, but that the actual vote with the ballot has to be 50% plus one. So I guess I would adjust that. It just seemed like, but the other thing about those votes, Jerry, is that they're weighted votes. So if a property, because it's a property-based business improvement district, if the property is valued at higher, or if it has more street frontage, because that's how the assessment is calculated, if they pay more than this other piece over here, their vote counts more. So you could actually get a smaller number of higher paying assessed properties controlling the whole thing. So that's why 30% just sounded kind of low, because I would like to see as broad a support for the assessment system, because you really don't want anybody forced into it, which actually could happen if someone opposes it, but a whole bunch of other people do. They're kind of dragged into it. So,
Well,
but
yeah,
we
and
voted unanimously
yeah,
on Tuesday. Yeah.
yeah, and except, I mean, the flip side of it is when there was a similar effort on Milpa Street, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that, you were vehemently against it. You went around and talked and were against them. What's the difference? Why were you for Montecito and against Milpas?
Well, I had heard about the plan for the business improvement district, which in the east side was assessing the businesses, not the properties. So, and it was based on the business licenses, right? So I originally didn't start out opposing it. I wanted to find out how many of these small businesses knew about the proposal. So I went out with somebody, I can't remember. I'll remember maybe when we're talking, but I went walking up and down Milpas asking the businesses, have you even heard about this? And they hadn't. And I think there was only one or two that had, and those were businesses that were really active with the Milpas Community Association. It's not called that anymore over there, but that was the organization that was, proposing the whole thing. And so then I thought, well, so then that came into play, what I was just explaining a minute ago, where the hotels, which were at the bottom of Milpas, right, the hotels at East Beach, that they had a bigger weight, more weighty vote because they paid a higher assessment, that they could force it on the small Latino businesses on Milpas Street. So that's why it seemed unfair to me.
All right. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier when you talked about the racial reckoning from this summer, and give you a chance to talk about something that you've taken a lot of heat for, and that was the demonstration, the protest that went down to the police headquarters, and there were, the cops were lined up in riot gear, and you came out from underneath, and you didn't take a knee, and you went for the microphone. There was a whole public spat about that. What was going on there? What's your perspective on that? What happened?
Well, I was at the rally at the Sunken Gardens and was really moved by what I heard there. To hear from the Black people what it felt like to grow up Black in Santa Barbara, and to see families move away, and then the brutality of the killing of George Floyd. That was powerful. So I was there, but I didn't want to march with them because of pandemic, and I didn't want to be breathing people's breath, marching around chanting. So I missed the kneeling ceremony, the take a knee, the 9 minutes to honor George Floyd. And otherwise I would have taken a knee had I marched with them and ended up there on the street, with them. And then I did maybe 3 or 4 demonstrations after that where I took a knee. One of them was with the public defenders and criminal defense attorneys who put on their own Black Lives Matter demonstration at the courthouse, and that was later. And so it was, and I'll tell you that kneeling for 8.5 minutes, imagining that that's how long it took for this, gentleman to have the life choked out of him. It was very powerful, very emotional. And so when I went to the organizers of the demonstration, I was there to receive their demands, and they didn't see me as an ally because I came from the location of the police department. So I understand that. And it was unfortunate, but I had meetings with them after that. They weren't in person, they were video conferences, right? And we cleared the air. I apologized. I said, I am your ally. I've never been, I've always been somebody who works for racial and social justice. And since then, the city has totally embraced, the demands. The biggest one was the civilian oversight, function. And if you look at, the sheriff's department, the sheriff told those same activists, to go jump in the lake. Were you watching the Board of Supervisors hearing where it was the same ask, it was the same demand, it was the same, what are you going to do, Sheriff's Department, so that kind of fatal, horrible incident doesn't happen? And the sheriff said, we don't need it. Our police chief, on the other hand, she immediately banned the chokehold, and she herself took a knee. I was there with her taking a knee. That was the student-led demonstration, which was maybe a week after the one that we're talking about. So our city council has really embraced the demands. We made a historic landmark of that beautiful church that's on Haley Street. There's a couple of other churches that they want landmarked. They might have to be a structure of merit because they're not old enough to be a landmark, or whatever those specifications are. But the $35,000 every year to Juneteenth. And Black Lives Matter Healing Justice did a beautiful Black is Beautiful. I think they called it showcase for Black History Month. So we're doing what we can, and I believe that the voters are in the context of, we're talking about my reelection, that they know what I stand for, and that I've always helped people of color, women of color especially, try to get into political office. I was trying to think the other day, what can I do? And that is a gift that I can give. I teach women how to raise money. I'm very good at raising money. I love calling people and chatting with them, and then I just do the ask, and so I'm almost up to $80,000. Not to change the subject, but
Okay. Let me, one of the other things that the council did at that time is you passed a resolution declaring racism to be a public health crisis. And it referenced systemic structural racism. Do you think that there is systemic structural racism in the Santa Barbara Police Department?
I believe there are individuals who who could probably use some training and some enlightenment. I think we all have implicit bias, where you look at somebody and you go, oh, that's a homeless person, or you know what I mean? Or that's a banker. It works both ways, right? Depending on how they're presenting. I give Lori Luno credit for as soon as she was hired, she did implicit bias training with the police department. I guess what I would say, Jerry, is that, and somebody told me this wasn't an original thought, so I'll give credit, that in Minneapolis, 4 days or the week before George Floyd was brutally murdered, the Minneapolis police officers would tell you, or their city council, oh, nothing like that could happen here, and it did. So that's why it's wonderful that we're looking at the processes at the police department, the training. To me, the hiring is super important. So if you weed out a racist or somebody who who's on a power trip, I guess that's the way to say it, right? Or somebody who's doesn't know how to control anger or violent impulses, if you can stop that person from getting hired in the first place, then we're better off. And we have a new interim chief, and we'll have a new chief, and my goal would be that they hire from local, that we hire young people who were born and raised here, who speak Spanish, who know the community. It really makes a difference when the officer
and
is
you
from
you think that
Santa
should
Barbara.
be the case also for the new chief, that they should be local, they should be from within the department?
It's going to be hard hiring a police chief right now, Jerry, just because of this real shift in law enforcement policy and awareness. It would be great, yeah, actually, if somebody from thanks for putting that idea in my head. I hadn't thought of that. I was just thinking of the officers themselves. These department head jobs we have usually are nationwide net to try to get the best person. Usually it's someone from California, like we're hiring a new community development director, and they have to know, California coastal law and stuff like that. So sometimes it's kind of California focused. But I'm for now I'm looking forward to working with Barney Malakian, and he was sworn in a couple of days ago. He's so smart. I had a meeting with him about cannabis, because he was leading that for the county, and I was the chair of the air pollution control district board of directors a couple of years ago, and people had been wanting the air pollution control district to take up is the word terpene, the cannabis, the pollution that maybe I got my word wrong, but that it is the cannabis when it's blooming, putting air pollution out there. So we had a meeting with Barney Malakian, and he's a real smart and knows how to listen. And then he came from law enforcement, so I think he's going to be great for us.
So just to close on this, if I just want to be sure I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying yet there's potentially a problem with individuals in the police department, but you don't see the department itself as a source of systemic structural racism.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about racism, that it's everywhere. And even people who don't think they're racist, that they do have these built-in, ideas that need to be purged. No, our police department is undergoing a review right now. I can tell you that the Eric Beecher with the Police Officers Association, he told me, he said, I'm not afraid of the civilian oversight. He said, we have nothing to hide. The Chief Luno said the same thing. And, but it remains to be seen, what the formation commission, what they're going to ferret out.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the project labor agreement, because I do want to talk about that a little bit. Basically now requires union labor on city public works projects, $5 million and above, if I understand it correctly. And you said in the course of that debate, it's been a non-union contracting world in the city of Santa Barbara. This program makes it so the work is good union work. Have there been instances where the city has contracted with non-union contractors and it hasn't been acceptable work?
I can think of an example of when it was a non-union contractor who bought material from Mexico when they were supposed to buy American. That was when we were building the airport terminal. that's not like a major thing, but it was a big, it was a big deal at the time. But you said something in your question that wasn't quite right. It so the project labor agreement policy gives union workers an opportunity to be part of the project. So if it's a non-union contractor that gets the job, they do get to use some of their employees, but they have to include union after a certain amount. So it's not like they're they're excluded, and they can bid. The non-union contractors can bid on the
But they would
project.
then have to use guys from the union hall.
They use them now. They use some of them. They use some of the apprentices, because you have to have a certain number of apprentices learning on the job, kind of thing. And they all know each other. We are changing. We're making a change. I think it's important to have unionized construction workers on these jobs. They're trained. They have extensive safety training. They're always compliant with the regulations. And then, like I said, when we get our young people into the apprenticeships, then we have local people building local projects. And the trades guides will tell me that they drive by a building that they help build, and they'll tell their kids, hey, I built that, I worked on that. And so there's a sense of pride.
Local is defined as the 3 tri-county area: San Luis Obispo,
Mm-hmm.
Santa Barbara, and Ventura. So it's not necessarily a city of Santa Barbara. So isn't it the fact that city of Santa Barbara workers are actually losing work under this?
Well, it's like concentric circles. So the first circle is city, and then South County, and then tri-counties. Yeah.
Your colleague,
I'm saying
go ahead.
I was just going to say, over time, when we recruit the young people into the apprentice, there'll be more unionized workers living here.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece of this, of course, which and you've heard this, that you've taken tens of thousands of dollars from the very unions that are going to benefit from this: electricians, carpenters, plumbers. Wouldn't it be better if you said, I'm not going to accept any money from them? Because people look at that and they say, oh, it's pay to play. That's what's going on. That's pay to play politics down at City Hall.
So my grandmother was a garment worker in the Los Angeles garment district, and she helped unionize her shop, her sweatshop. It was literally a sweatshop. And so when I talk about coming from a union family, I can say that the prosperity of my family was born on her back. She bought a house, then they bought her out, and they put the Pomona Freeway there. And then she bought a duplex, and she lived on one side, and my mom raised us, on the other side. So I come from a union family. So when people wonder about the contributions, so I'm for project labor agreements before I got elected. And so it's not pay to play, it's that we share the same values. And people, if they don't like that I take money from the unions, then they can make a judgment about that. But I let them know, it's what my values are, and it's good policy as far as I'm concerned. And again, Jerry, I don't hear those criticisms from people. I think city voters here in Santa Barbara are pro-labor, and they understand the value of all the work that unions have done over the years. I won't bend your ear about they created the weekend and the 40-hour work week, and breaks and safety conditions. And so I get your point, and I'm always careful to make my votes separate of people who give me money. People have given me contributions and I've made them unhappy. So I'm being honest about that. So
yeah, but you can see the perception that people would have of that. Yes, how they might read that as you're doing this on behalf of the people who are giving you money?
Um, I've been elected how many times now? 3, and I've always been someone who supports, private unions as well as our public employee, unions, and people keep voting for me. So I'm hoping that we can that I'll repeat the success in November.
Well,
So
one more thing on this. There was that exchange with you and Kristen Snedden that Josh wrote a lot about at the time on the final vote on the project labor agreement, where you, I guess, angered her because it seemed like you were trying to rush the vote, saying we got 4 votes, uh, I mean, I can read you the whole thing, but you know what I'm talking about. What was that about? Why were you unwilling to hear her at that point?
well, I'm trying to remember exactly too. Life rushes in like the tide, Jerry, after a certain vote, and I'm like, been dealing with other stuff since then. But
Well,
I all
here, Josh said it came across as though Murillo was more concerned about the proposal passing than hearing everyone's comments. Miss Snedden, I know the motion is not what you want.
okay.
Murillo said before Snedden was ready to speak. Snedden fired back. How do you know that? That you remember now, right? Or I can read the rest of Josh's story.
So I always count the votes. So as soon as actually I start hearing it during the question period, because when you ask a question, I can kind of tell where people are going. And then there's public comment, and then people start making their deliberative comments, and I'm like, oh, I think Eric's going in this direction, and I take notes, and I'm like, okay, he thought this about that, and I make a little chart, and so I was actually apologizing to her when I said, I'm sorry, the vote's not going to go your way, because her questions and comments had been, it seemed to me like she wasn't going to go with it. There was 4 things that we were arm wrestling about, related to the PLA. So, I mean, that's exactly where I was coming from. And I'm sorry that she felt that I was, pushing her in a direction or making assumptions or something like that. But her, I really thought her commentary was leading her to a certain way. No, she ended up voting. I think.
Well, there was an amendment, and she put in the amendment so that 50% of the work is supposed to go to city people who live in the city.
And it was a guideline. And I remember now that that vote ended up 6-1. So it was Michael Jordan that was the one. And so that worked out. But I can tell you right now, Kristen and I get along pretty well, even when we irritate each other, like I'll tell her in the hallway or, like a text, like, sorry about that. Or, so, yeah, it's, I think
there is,
I think we got through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like that the narrative often coming out of the meetings at City Hall is there are a lot of sniping going on, and I think some of that really is due to district elections. I've covered other places that have gone from at large to district, and it's not an easy adjustment. And I know you have to herd a lot of cats in doing that, but I went back and looked. All 6 of your colleagues endorsed you in the assembly race, but as far as I know, nice? You've only got 1 or maybe 2, Megan and Oscar, in your reelection. Why is that?
Well, at this early stage, I for sure have Megan and Oscar, and I'm working on Jordan and Friedman. And Alejandra, I haven't even broached her about it. It's like if you're asking your wife for a favor, Jerry, you kind of have to wait for the right moment, and wait until she's in a good mood. And so, it's really early days. And what is this? This is March. And, so I have some time until it's the right moment to ask. So, and I have great endorsements. Megan, very popular, Oscar, everybody loves Oscar. I have Joan Hartman and Doss Williams and Greg Hart from the Board of Supervisors, Rose Munoz from the school board. I'm working on, uh, like the endorsement season will roll out with the Sierra Club, Women's Political Committee. I would love their endorsement. And the party endorsement is coming up sooner than later. And, for your viewers, for your audience, the Young Democrats, which is a club of the Democratic Party, they're calling it a forum. How about that? There's a forum on March 15th. So
Oh, okay.
what's today? So 10 days from now, I better get busy, get ready.
All right.
And so it's like a preview, so that when they go to make the vote in April at the party level, that they know who they're endorsing. And I don't mean to be rude, and we haven't even talked about baseball, but I thought we were doing a 28-minute segment for the.
Yeah, let me just ask you a couple of.
It's not like TV anymore, right? You don't have to be
Well,
28
no,
minutes.
exactly. It's kind of cool. Yeah, I appreciate the extra time. You got 5 more minutes just so I can ask you a couple more things.
Sure.
Okay, on the homeless situation, would you support a new tax, either a bed tax or a sales tax, to be earmarked specifically for homeless strategies?
I would, and I saw you chatting with Nick Welsh about that. So I would actually do a poll about a parcel tax. There's a lot of fine people who own homes and properties in this county or this city that would, maybe, tax themselves to help the less fortunate. And it is so visible now, and I watch it carefully because homelessness is one of my assignments on the council. I chair the SB Act Collaborative on Homelessness, and I'm the liaison to all the county discussions, which were actually derailed a little bit by the pandemic, but we're back on. We were really working hard on the tent thing, avoiding it. We cleared out a bunch of tents on the beach. They were actually on the sand, and that took a lot of work. But yeah, the way you help someone who's homeless is you give them a home. And if you've ever seen the project El Carrillo it's Carrillo and Bath right in there. Just the beautiful little efficiency studios. It's really just a room with a bathroom and a decent little kitchen, and it's what people need to get off the street.
It's getting worse. The problem's getting worse, right? I mean, we have more homeless people, more unsheltered people, at least according to Nick's piece, which I came out of that county hearing.
Well, to be honest, the people have always lived in the railroad and highway corridor, but they were out of sight, out of mind. And then when the pandemic hit, they were smart and didn't want to be in a congregate living situation. So they're out and they spread out. And so I think that's why we're seeing more people. But for whatever reason, yeah, I think, the economy took a hit and more people are living in their cars and that kind of thing. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with, the city administrator, and I'm like, well, what if we did create a place where people could have a tent city where, a sanctioned area? And he said, well, let's talk about where that would be. So Oscar liked the idea of Earl Warren Showgrounds, but they're their own state entity and they have their own activities going on there. People are always saying, how about the Sears building? Well, it's privately owned and they have plans to build housing. So it would be like a city park. Well, which one would that be? We have a piece of land down by like almost where Salsa Puedes hits the ocean, and it's where the firefighters train. So it's kind of openish. It has a structure where they go in and bust through the roof and stuff like that for training. And I said, well, how about there? And they said, well, then where would the firefighters train? So we are having discussions about where we can allow people, but but it, when I look at what's happening in Venice, and when I was going to Dodgers games in 2019, there was tents all over in that area. Somebody was telling me there's tents in West Los Angeles. So it's Venice, not even like, low income areas. It's they're everywhere. So I don't know how it sounds, but if I say that if you look at other cities, we're not so bad. And then we have a really great outreach team, and we do get some people into housing. It's hard, Jerry. It's management. We manage the problem until there's another shelter, or until there's more little apartments to put them in. We're going to have a challenge. I love the governor for giving us Operation Room Key, where it was money for motel rooms. But right now, the discussion at the county is where to locate a new shelter. They call it a navigation center now.
Yeah. All right.
And we're going to arm wrestle about that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Because I do want to, I did promise to get you out of here. So two other issues real quick. Just give me quick answers. In terms of the State Street promenade, there's some people that feel, it's kind of looking junked up. Everybody's kind of got their different parklet design, and some of them look like rancheros, and now you have these green stripes. Are you happy with the way State Street looks now?
Well, I would say it's a work in progress. And the Historic Landmarks Commission, or the downtown parking, and Rob Dayton and those guys, they are working on standardizing the look of everything. I know that HLC doesn't like canopies. They don't like things on top because that blocks the view of the architecture in the background. And it's true, it's hard to make that look uniform, right? So I think the goal is to not let anything be on top. The green is the standard international color of bike lanes, and I think there is no.
It's real ugly.
Well, I never wear that color, to tell you the truth, but we're really happy about bikes being on State Street. I mean, we're really trying to not exclude bicycles, because.
All right. Let me ask you this, because the interesting thing about this race, or one interesting thing, you're running for a 5-year term, because we're transitioning to even year
Which is a good thing. Even year elections, more people vote. Okay.
So 5 years. So you're basically asking the voters to extend your contract for 5 years. What have you learned? What have you learned in the 4 years that would make you do a good job in the next 5 years?
When I go door to door and talk to people, and that's really where I have the best FaceTime with everyday people, not you and Nick, who are in the inner circle, or the watchers of City Hall who have, who love watching our meetings. These are people who don't watch our meetings, right? But they vote, and they're happy. They love Santa Barbara, the natural beauty, the low crime rate, the good schools, and they're happy as long as they have a job and a place to live. So it always comes down to a secure income and secure housing. So I've learned that, and that's my vision for the future of Santa Barbara is housing opportunities. We have a jobs housing imbalance. We have more jobs than we have housing. I think we could bring in better paying jobs, and maybe some of that property downtown is going to office space, and we can bring another Sonos or Amazon type, that level of business to downtown Santa Barbara, because retail is I don't think it's going to make a comeback. Some of the retail works for the tourism industry. If you're visiting, you want to buy something, and something from Santa Barbara that reminds you of your visit to the city. So some retail will survive, but that commercial property down there, we can use that to bring in, better paying jobs. So I guess that's what I would say, that I've learned to be focused on what really makes the residents happy. I don't have any control much over the schools. The city partners with the school district about after school programming. And I guess I really, if you don't mind, since we're wrapping up, I do want to say that working with gang risk youth is one of my community projects that I would say other candidates can't say that they do that kind of work. And we've had the fatalities on the east side, and we're working on a summer program right now where we target gang risk kids at promise, is what some people want me to say, at promise youth, to go into this kickball tournament. We have this program we're working on. I have to give Eric Friedman credit because he was working on it before me. But so Jerry, why people should vote for me is my connection with the families, with the youth serving organizations that really look out for the most disadvantaged youth in the community. I do personal outreach to homeless people. I don't think anyone else can say that, and I'm proud of that. It's exhausting, but I do want to keep doing the job, and I can do it for another 5 years, and it would be an honor actually to get that. I get what you're saying about it's kind of a bonus year, but I'm known for working hard, and I'll continue to do that. It's my job. This is my work. This is my life's work.
Okay, fair enough. Mayor Cathy Murillo, thank you so much for taking the time and the extra time to be with us today. And I'm hoping we'll talk to you again as we get closer to the election.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.